going to talk about bugs. Not all of these bugs that are here are necessarily in the yard, but they're around somewhere in the yard, around the house, or somewhere. Carpenter ants, these are not necessarily yard, but they're around the house. It can be, and there are different varieties of this critter. So, and they're different size from an 1/8 of an inch, which is real small, up to about a little over a 1/2 an inch. So they can be a damage to the house. It kind of gives you a description of the critter. They're not the same as termites. Totally different. They're kind of similar to termites, but they're not termites. The termites are light colored. They do not like any type of light on them at all. That's why you'll see them basically in the yard, in the dirt, or under the house, or somewhere where they can be covered up, or they make their own tunnels. So that's what a termite is, but ants don't do that. They just basically chew and eat. The red imported fire ant, we're gonna see those. You can find these things out in your yard. They are imported. They came into, I believe it was in Mobile, Alabama, and a bunch of pallet material from down in South America. And they have spread now to basically all of the southern states: Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Arkansas, Georgia, all the way up to into Kentucky. They do not like real cold weather. They can survive cool weather, but they are a real problem. They have been known in some very rare cases to have killed a few people because they came in and didn't like the people being there, and they sting. They don't bite, they sting. And you can see from the bottom picture down here that they do build mounds. Have a farm down in Lincoln County, about 50 miles south of here. And unfortunately, I have a few there. They have some mounds that are just about knee high. They can be, in some ways, they can be pretty good because they prey on flea larvae, chinch bugs, cockroach eggs, ticks, and some other pests. So it's not too bad to have one or two around, but a yard full is not too good. But the problems outweigh the benefits. The eradication of this species, there ain't one. There's not a way to get rid of all of them. Only thing you can do is kind of control by knocking the mounds down and using. There are some things that you can get. Go to co-op or something, someplace like that, and they do have a granular poison that you can spread either on into the mound or in the yard, and they go hunting for something to eat, and they'll take that and take it back to the mound, and will kill the queen and those that are eating it. So next, aphids. These can be a problem to some real tender plants, but you can see how tiny they are. They're just dots, basically. But they can be harmful. They beginning of the growing season, they like it early in the year. Females lay eggs toward the end of the growing season. And one of the easiest things that you can do without using some type of insecticide or something of that nature, just go out and wash them off with a hose. They have a problem getting back, but they will come back, and more will hatch out. But if you can go out with a hose and just wash them off, it'll take them a few days to get back. About once a week, you can go out and wash them off, and they'll be fine. Cucumber beetles. Basically, this is a problem that you'll have in a vegetable garden. Most important damage is the transmission of a bacterial wilt, lethal to the vine, so they will kill the vine that they are eating on. Row covers on young plants will keep the mother or the first ones that come in and lay eggs, will keep them off of the plant, so then you won't, if you can keep them off, you're not going to have any coming in. So use row covers, floating row covers. You can plant a crop, like if you're doing cucumbers, you can do something like plant some marigolds. You can also use something like pumpkin vine and or squash. It's up there too, but anyway. You can track the beetles with that, or marigolds. Sometimes marigolds help because they don't like the odor, and they will vacate. Carpenter bees, these kind of look like bumblebees, but they're not. They're basically all black. Well, the top of them, as you can see here, the top is yellow, but down under the belly here, it's all black. And they have a shiny black abdomen. Adults emerge from the pupal stage in August to September, feed, return to their old nest, and overwinter. These can be a problem in that they do sting, will sting you. They emerge in April and mate, and they keep all exposed wood surface painted, and that will help keep them away. This is one that is relatively new to the United States. It came in about around 2000. It came in from Asia, and it came in, I think, in through New York or Michigan up there, and it's it is killing all the ash trees anywhere, and what they do is they get down under the bark, and you see how they do. They eat the cambium out, which cuts off the supply of water and food to the tree from going up the tree. So they cut these tunnels in, and they stop the flow of the nutrient and the water up the tree, which keeps the tree living. It's and they have determined that one of the major ways that now that it's spreading is people. And what they're doing is they're taking wood that has an emerald ash borer in under the bark and moving it from where to where. And the next one now, this one shows we're quarantined. All this part, and this is a 2016 map. It's the best, most recent one I could find. But all of this that's dark over here is quarantined. You're not allowed to carry any ash residue, bark, trees, posts, firewood, or anything from this area into this area. Now, since this is 2016, probably this is expanded probably at least another 1 or 2 counties westward. And you can read down here the counties that were included at the time this was done. And you can be fined for moving from that the quarantine area into the non-quarantine. A lot of this has been, the spread has been based on people carrying firewood, believe it or not, from the quarantined area into the non-quarantine area. So they're asking that no one carry firewood from east to west. West to east is okay, but east to west, no, because that's where they are. Your firewood can have bark on it. There can be a larva down under that bark, and it can mature, come out, and spread the emerald ash borer into those areas. Grubs and lawns. I did a session a year or so ago on moles and voles, and it's 99 people out of 100 really don't like moles in their yard. I really don't care, because it does 2 things. They aerate the soil, and they love these things. That's their basic food, that and earthworms. But these are a lot more succulent than an earthworm is. So, but they do read those grubs feed on the roots of your turf grass, on trees, shrubs, and whatever is down there. You can find them if you just take a thing and cut out a square, lift them up, and you'll probably find at least one or two in that small area. So you can also cut down on watering, because they love lots of water. They do a lot better in moist areas than they do in dry areas. So you can look for a moist lush lawn. That's where they look to lay their eggs, so that they hatch out into these grubs. And some of these things take up to 2 years to mature. Most of them are around a year. So if you want to cut back on it, you can cut back on the moisture in the yard. All right, dogwood borer, and this is a little bit like the emerald ash borer. They do the same thing. They get down, and a little bit hard to see here, but they do get into that cambium area, and the tree is not able to feed itself because it cuts off the flow of food and moisture up the tree to keep the tree alive. It takes flowering cherries, chestnuts, apples, mountain ash, hickory, pecan, willows, birch, bayberry, oak, hazel, myrtle, and loquat. So it's not limit itself like the emerald ash borer does. The emerald ash borer only works on the ash tree, but this works on a number of trees. You can prune out and destroy the infected branches if you can find those, and those can be found by whether the leaves on the tree are beginning to kind of wilt, or because the branch is dead. So you get back about 6 or 8 inches down past where the first death of the plant is. Cut it off, and preferably, if you can, burn it, because that destroys them. Cut out the borers with a sharp knife. Avoid pruning when the moths are active, which is so you prune in late winter instead of that. Avoid wounding. Well, if you're going to cut something out, you're wounding it, but you're getting rid of a problem as well. Iris borer. This is something at our last master gardener meeting, we had some people coming in and talking about iris. And he didn't really get into the problems that they have, but this is one that the iris borer comes in and gets down into that root system and starts it to deteriorate, and the iris plant will die. The larva grows to about 2 inches in length, and in July, early August, the iris borer larvae move from the rhizomes into the soil, where they grow until next year, and then lay eggs, and then start to pupate and grow another another family of the thing. Get rid of it, remove and destroy the previous year's dead foliage, and before the 1st of April.
The lady that spoke to us said use Comet. Sprinkle the rhizomes with Comet.
Yeah.
Keeps the bugs away and the borers away. I had never heard that.
And neither. I had forgotten she said that, but anyway. All right. Squash vine borer. You can see it down here. They get into the stem of the squash vine, and basically from that point on up toward the top of the plant, that plant dies, and you can see it here laying in the vine. Little wilting of the plant, and the base of the plant's moist. Can be seen piled up outside. You can see it actually on the outside of the stem from where it goes into that stem. And you need to be killed or remove that part of the stem, killed by the borer activity, piled up, and then properly timed chemical pesticides. Here's one where you may need to use a pesticide as much a preventative as it is something to kill the one that is already there. Bagworms. These things, they can be real pests. They feed on about 128 different plants. The most common are the arborvitae, red cedar, and other junipers. Red cedar is the one that you probably see as much on around here as anything else. Going into our subdivision where we live, they have some pine trees, and there are about 3 of those pine trees have had bagworms on them for the last 2 or 3 years, and a couple of them have already died because they suck all the moisture out and defoliated, weakened and rendered unsightly. Complete defoliation occurs. The adult female does not look like a moth because she is inside this cocoon, and she only comes out, gosh, I don't remember exactly, is it fall in it? In May. And then she starts laying eggs. Those eggs will mature and get in, and she will never leave this bag here. She will live there in that bag until she dies. But she will have left eggs, which will hatch, and then we start the process over again the next year. You can hand pick these. If you don't have too many, I have lost a plant one time 3 or 4 years ago, and the first year that I noticed there was only 2 or 3 on it. The next year, and I didn't do anything. The next year there was 15 or 20. I didn't do anything, but if I had been picking them off, I'd have still had that plant. So that's about one of the best ways that you can control the bagworm, is to get and pick this rascal off and destroy it. I think I might put it in the garbage, but I don't think I'd put it in compost or anything like that because she would continue to live. But if it gets as heavy as it's shown down here in this, all over the plant, you might as well dig it up and trash it, because you've got too many bagworms to try to handle and get rid of. Cutworms, this is usually something that is you've either just planted or something that has just come up from a seed that you've planted. Cutworms love to get on fresh, tender plants. They will cut it off right basically at the soil line, or maybe just a tad under, and you'll be fine today. And if you haven't put a shield around it to keep the worms away, go out tomorrow and that plant will be dead, laying on the ground. So they work at night, and what you can do, you see here the little ring that is made out of cardboard or paper. Basically, you can take newspaper and make a cone or a cylinder out of it, and as long as it's down in the ground an inch or so, it'll be fine. Once it gets up to where it's growing fairly well, it's a little bit too tough for them to chew on and to cut off. So it's something the plant has to be basically new and growing for them to bother or to get anything with it. Eastern tent caterpillars, I think we've probably all seen these bags in some kind of tree one time or another. They like trees like apples, wild cherry, and crab apples, but they will also attack some of the others, as you can see here. They overwinter and as a mass of eggs, and then the eggs hatch in the spring, and the caterpillars get into usually it's in a fork of the plant, and they build a web, and they basically live in there until they are able to get out and to multiply, lay eggs. And the larvae live in a tent and feed on they go out then usually at night into the tree and looking like this, and then feed on the leaf tissue of the plant. It's not necessary to control the eastern tent caterpillar. You can see the mama up here, and there's one of the kids, and a whole bunch of them right there. They don't really do enough damage usually to a plant for the plant to die. So if you can go out and get rid of them, I've seen most people, the way they got rid of them is get a stick, forked stick up into that tent that they build it like here, and twist it, turn it up, and throw that then into the garbage, and that will get rid of them the quickest and the easiest way, rather than having to spray. Fall webworm is basically will feed on any tree other than a conifer, and they are basically, they look a lot like the eastern, except instead of being in the spring, these are in the fall, and very frankly, it's a beautiful caterpillar. The moth is a nice white, pretty insect, but they don't do an awful lot of problems either. But it's more of a nuisance than a threat to the health of the tree, and basically just let nature take its course and they will disappear. Or you can go in, like I said a while ago, you can take a fork or a stick or something, turn them, twist them up, and then discard that. Gypsy moth, another import, and I don't remember exactly where it came from. I believe it was from Europe. I've seen maps where the gypsy moth came in, and practically the whole part of the forest, square mile acres of those things, the forest would be killed. They increase in size, they defoliate the tree. That's the way they kill the plant, is not by getting under the bark or anything like that. They actually they eat all the leaves off so that the plant cannot live, because it is not able to bring up moisture from the ground and food from the ground. So it kills the tree by not being able to feed. Maintain plant health. Healthy trees can withstand 1 or 2, maybe 3 defoliations over a 3-year period. But if it's if it comes in the 4th, you might as well cut it down and use it for firewood, because it's not going to do too well. Spray the leaves with an insecticide. That does work, but if you're wanting to stay away from it, you're going to have problems. I don't know if you can even wash them off or not. Hornworms. Who hadn't seen one of these? I think everybody has seen them at one time or another. I grew up on a farm, and we had a tobacco patch, and they loved to chew on tobacco. And you could actually walk down through the field and hear them eating. And they get up to be, probably that long, nice, green, fat. And if you see one that looks like this, don't kill it, because it's going to die in about a couple of weeks anyway. What has happened there is a moth that has come in and laid an egg on the back of this worm, and these are the eggs. When they hatch, they actually suck the juice out of the worm, so he's dead. When I was a kid, my dad sent me to the tobacco patch and said, go get rid of the hornworms. Well, like I said, you could hear them actually chewing out there. What we did at that time was go pick him off and slam him on the floor, on the ground, and he would splatter like, a bug on your windshield. The larvae feed on the foliage 3 or 4 weeks. Then they get into the soil. Hand picking is probably the best way, because in all probability there are not that many, even in an acre of tobacco, that you can't probably get rid of in an hour or 2. So they will kill a plant because they suck all the juice out of it. But unless it's just totally covered up with those things, which I have never seen, in all probability is not going to be a problem. Apple maggots, this usually is, the apples aren't the only, they can sometimes find blueberries, cherries, pears, and plums, and you can see what he does, he comes in at the base of the apple and goes in and feeds on the inside. So you don't really, unless you look at the base of this apple, you're not going to know whether it's infected with an apple maggot or not. And you can see here the mama, and then it gets into this stage and then to this stage. Most of the damage is caused to the fruit, and it's mainly the apple that this thing gets into and creates problems. So if you're growing apples to sell, you're going to want to keep these rascals out. If you're growing one or two or three for your home use, make sure you check the base of this apple before you bite into it, because you're liable to find something else besides this. All right. Spider mites. These little rascals can be real problems, not just on outside trees, but on house plants as well. They attack anything that you can grow. Basically, they will get into. Two-spotted spider mite as well. You can see this one is all red, but there's another one that has a spot on this side and another one on the other side. But they basically do the same thing. Result in bleaching and stippling of leaves. Severe infestations can cause entire leaves to become bronze curl and completely, and basically they'll kill it. Spray that leaf anyway. Spraying a strong stream of water, particularly the underside, and that's where most of your insects are going to be hiding, is under the leaf, bottom of that leaf, because they're not seen by anything, or as many things anyway. That will just basically knock them off. And they have, since they're so small, it takes them a long time to get back if you're washing them off to where they would want to live and where they would like to eat. Severe infestations can affect the plant part, and it has to take that part and maybe destroy it, burn it, or something like that. We've even, some places in the summertime, we have a screened-in porch that we put some of the plants in out on that porch in the summertime, and they have even picked up some spider mites and some others even on that screened porch. And in the wintertime we bring it back in, since it's a warm house plant, bring it back inside, and we'll wind up with the spider mites inside the house. So you can run into them. They're a little easier to control being when they're limited space than it is when they're outside. But anyway, squash bugs looks like a stink bug, but it's not. Cause leaves to wilt, turn black, fall off. Adult pests can be seen feeding on the main stems. Nymphs more likely to be found feeding. Key is detection and control. Hand-pick the bugs and the eggs to destroy them, dropping them in a bucket of water, soapy water. Plain water, they drown, but anyway, soapy water is better. Stink bugs, as a member of in the true bug group, stink bugs feed on inserting their mouth parts into the leaves. Other damage includes yellow or white splotches. Collect them, destroy them. Natural controls, either predators or parasitic wasps. A lot of people don't like wasps and some of those other things, but they do love to eat, and they enjoy eating other insects. Snails and slugs. Here is the beer trap. They can smell beer. It doesn't take much. A lid of a jar lid, that's all it takes. Fill it up with beer, set it out, and then overnight usually they can smell it. They will crawl in, and I guess they get drunk and can't make it out and drown on beer. So soft bodies, the slug has a soft body, and of course there's a slug, there's a snail, and that's a snail. They're very, very similar, except these two have a house that they carry along with them. These two, if they're out in the sun very long, they will actually blister and die. So they are, in the daytime, they usually find something to crawl under. They get under leaves, under bark, under anything that they can get under, protect them from the sun. So they are going to basically stay hidden in the daytime, come out and feed at night. Range from 1/2 to 3 inches in length. I don't think I've ever seen one that big. Might run from him if it's that big. Just use traps. I told you what the best trap is, and you can hand pick them. I'm not going to go out and hand pick a slug, but I will the snail. But anyway, next. Yellow jackets. Leave them alone. That's the main thing. But if they're trying to build a nest close to some place where you're going to be frequenting, like doors or in your garage or something like that, make sure you get, while they are not there, get rid of the nest. But anything else that you see out under a tree or a shed that you rarely go into, leave them alone, because they also go out and hunt something to eat, which usually are some type of other insect that you may not be wanting. They may be getting a stink bug. They may be getting some of the other critters that are that are infesting your shrubs and trees and flowers that you want to get rid of. And these guys do a good job. Japanese beetles are another import. A lot of these critters are things that have come in here from foreign countries. They're not native. The Japanese beetles overwinter as a grub in the soil below the frost line, kind of like the grubs that we saw earlier. Resume feeding on grass roots in the spring. Adults emerge between May and July. The Japanese beetles active for about 6 weeks. You can hand pick them. They should be collected and dropped into a container of soapy water. Is the best way to get rid of them. Peachtree borer, similar, well, not similar either, because it's either, as you can see here, that's the grub, that's the mama, and the damage is basically comes out as a gummy jelly-like sap from the holes that they have made in the bark of the tree. And keep the tree, mechanically remove the borer, but when you remove them, you're going to have to actually cut into the bark and remove that area that the grub has gotten into and has created a gummy mass down here wherever they have entered the under the bark. It could be a little higher than that, but and you're going to find a hole of some kind where that larva went in, and the sap on the inside will start draining out of that hole, and that's what causes that jelly mass. Keep them growing. You can take that and cut that part of the bark out. It will heal over. It may take it 2 or 3 years to heal over, particularly if it's the size of this one. That's a big one. I've had to do basically the same thing with a dogwood borer, and only problem is it's up higher, and I've actually taken out a large section of the bark, and it's taken 3 to 4 years for that to cover back over, but I saved the tree. It does well. I have one in my yard here, and we had one in my yard when I lived in Memphis, did the same thing, and they did well. Sodworms, larvae of the caterpillar stage of a moth, construct little burrows in the soil, and you can see where they have actually killed the grass in these areas, where they have been feeding. Worms can then cut off the blades of the grass. They'll come up and cut the blades of the grass off of here and take it down into the soil where they can eat it. It reduces the thatch level to about 1/2, no more than 1 inch, and use an insecticidal soap can help get rid of them. Centipedes. This is an interesting one. I think everybody here would really like this because it's a distant relative to the lobster, crayfish, and shrimp. Anybody want some boiled centipede? But they're harmless. They are land dwellers. They prefer moist areas. They carry no diseases. and considered more of a nuisance than they are destructive. The millipede adults overwinter in their soil, spring with female lace, 20 to 300 eggs, and you can see this one got a few legs. This one has got a gang of legs. That's where they get the name. This is a centipede. The millipede is multiple legs. They feed on some insect eggs, some other insect material. They carry no diseases, but more of a nuisance than anything.